It's a fascinating thing because you guys have taken your time developing this project. The three of us sat here after a Works in Progress showing in November 2015, and I was thinking about some of the materials you were exploring then, and for those historians in the room who want to dig into their creative process, there's things that you didn't see tonight that we saw then. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how much you make and how you get a lot of material and then how you decide that's got to go or we want to keep this, and maybe something about the abundance of things you were working with.
We had, well, because this process is new for me, and though we sit in my studio and I write and I paint and I edit very ferociously, so I know what it means to have way too many ideas that you fall in love with and you think, oh, this is incredible, and then you think, oh, this has to go. So that was the process, in real time, with bodies and having a million ideas, beds and ladders and pianos, and there were flocks of geese. What did we have? No, we didn't have flocks of geese, but we had just a million different things. I was dancing, I was playing the piano, I was, there were scary moments indeed. I said, I can't imagine that we could have done it in a minute less than the 3 years that it took, because there were so many amazing rivers that we went down, and John, the director, was saying, this is what this is shaping it and rewriting. Mm-hmm. So you do it.
So, John, could you say something about that, about sort of the time to reflect? You had creative time, and then you could go away and think about things, and then come back into it, and how you knew what were the things to return to.
Well, I will say, in a way, it's now easy to talk about that because the piece exists. But you have to understand that when we started this, it wasn't the principles of uncertainty. It was nothing. There was nothing there. We were just kind of following our attractions. And I was basically just making up dances that felt like fun dances to make up, and with an idea of Maira's aesthetic. But for instance, Maira was very much in the piece tonight. There were certain iterations of this project throughout the years where Maira was less in the piece, we edited out, I would say, a good 60% of the kind of stuff that we did. But now it exists, and what happened is we sort of got to a point where we were just making things up, but they didn't have an anchor. And that is when you introduced the idea. You said, how would you feel if we called this project The Principles of Uncertainty?
Desperate.
You're desperate, yes. Well, we were sort of at that point where it was like, okay, what's happening?
The exploration and the discovery, and then it was time to ground it.
Right. But I want to say that we spent a lot of really wonderful time together. I mean, the premise of it was, not the premise, but one of the things that we decided was that we were just going to take walks together and just stand on the corner and watch people and just see how people move, and it's always so heart-rending. Everybody doing everything is incredibly touching. So that sense of shared kind of, empathy for the human race. I mean, in our family, we have an expression, poor everybody, which we use hourly. And I think that in that sense of the two of us looking at people and really loving that, it brought us to a place where we could then I could desperately say, what about the principles of uncertainty? But it made sense. It made a lot of sense.
So, John, I was thinking of your comfort of working in narrative from working in opera and in musical theater, but in modern dance, your works have been, even if they're got a sense of character, they're abstract and they're not narrative. So was this a kind of moment of like, oh, my worlds can collide a little bit. I can have a kind of underpinning of storytelling.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of this work actually kind of in that way, as being sort of a combination of those things. But what I realize is, yes, I am attracted to narrative work sometimes. I am attracted to ambiguity, and in this work, there was an iteration of this work which was far more obvious, I guess I would say, in a literal way, and it made me was not a good direction. And it required some ambiguity and some things that I didn't want to control necessarily. So I think what happened is I sort of let go a little bit of trying to pin things down in such a concrete way that I was really telling people what it is. And sort of, actually, Daniel Petro, the actor who is in the performance, who is also the assistant director, said something to me about, it's nice to give the audience a little space to daydream while experiencing the performance, or any performance, and that set very well with me, that I did. There's space for people to assign their ideas and sort of their thoughts and feelings. And so that kind of guided, I suppose, this combination of some narrative elements and some more ambiguous ideas.
Myra, I wonder if you could say something about working with other artists. I mean, that you've worked with other artists, but here you had other kinds of visual elements that that you could control or not control. That all of a sudden you're working with a lighting designer, a brilliant lighting designer, Nicole Pierce, who brings in color and texture, and but you're also so visual in your own work. Could you talk a little bit about some sort of like what you were willing to yield on and what you were unwilling to yield on?
I was willing to yield on nothing. No, it's really a complicated process, and I think that's another reason it took, thank God it took 3 years, because for 2.5 years I was like, I can't do this. So you know, you have a vision, and you draw a little box on a piece of paper, and you go, well, that's a nice little box, and then it has to be built, and it's this big lumbering thing on wheels, and it has to be lit, and it has to make sense in the process. So every single thing that translates from a piece of paper onto the stage with people and music and lighting is so complicated. And so I, fortunately, I'm working with really amazing people. I told John that I had a dream about him a few weeks ago when I got lost outside of the theater, and it was a fortress and I couldn't get in, and I heard his voice say to me, "Oh, don't worry, I'm here, I'll take care of you." And I thought, well, this is really great, because it really is a leap to work with people who you're coming in as kind of an outsider, but it's been extraordinary, so hurrah. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about is that once you send your materials off to the publisher, it's done. You are out of control.
I don't have to act them out on stage every night.
And also that somebody's not still tinkering. The musicians had a new organization in space tonight. So so what's that like for you to be like, oh my God, it keeps.
You know what? It's such a great revelation, as opposed to, well, we decided something. I mean, I'm not that fixed anyway in my ideas, but just to see how things can change, and you don't have to panic. I mean, you can panic a little bit here and there, but the sense that, yes, you try something new, and it's fluid, and it changes, and maybe it'll change. Maybe we'll do it next in German, I think we're talking about, so.
John, could you say something about working with Colin Jacobson and the Knights? And we saw your collaboration, Chalk and Soot, with Colin Jacobson here in 2014. And so just how you guys came together for this project.
Sure. Well, Colin Jacobson, that was the music director for this project. And you know what? I guess this conversation seems to be about what it is to collaborate, and for us specifically to collaborate. And Colin is a really great friend and a previous collaborator, and something that is very lovely about him is he also is quite flexible in imagining that things can go in a lot of different directions. So when we started just making things up, we knew that a theme we were dealing with is time, and the feeling of time, and the impermanence of us being here. We have limited time. And so we asked Colin to create a playlist of music that was very specifically concerned with the fact of time. And he sent, like say 50 different pieces, some of them were here tonight. And some of them have odd time signatures, some of them have wrong tempi, sort of within, there's a rag that's in slow motion. And we just started making things up to these pieces that he curated for us. And then there's also a composition that is his own in this, the whale sort of sequence. And I would just say, you're saying you're not so fixed in your ideas sometimes. Colin also very willing to go with the flow, let's say, and I feel like I'm fairly easy with going with the flow too, and those things could add up to a disaster of nobody ever making any decision. But luckily there is some kernel within each of us that knows and wants to actually make the thing at some point, and so...
Because you did have this world premiere coming up, so it's good.
Right, the deadline is really valuable.
So this is a comment about the lobby installation that that you worked on with Norton Owen, the director of preservation, and Patsy Gay, the assistant archivist, and that you took over the lobby, that there's been potatoes in the lobby all summer, I think the first time that I know of. Could you just say something about the conversation about when you decided and how you decided to make it look like that?
Well, we started with the potatoes, of course, you always do, and then and then it just, I don't know, naturally grew from there. Norton and I were talking about what this might be, and I have, when I'm working on any project, I collect and produce a lot of ephemera and notes and typewritten letters and just all kinds of documents and Chinese menus and just all kinds of documents that appeal to me. And when I saw them, when I was talking to Jordan, I said, I don't think we need anything else but all of this ephemera. It really appeals to me, and let's just blow it up and cover everything and be in charge of everything, the bathroom signs, the no phone sign, like a real dictator of graphic design. And so it was tremendous fun, and I like it because it's very loose, it's very airy. You can look at it or not look at it. You can eat soup or not eat soup. It's just